All right, everybody, we're going to talk about the Southeast region this week. So, the Southeast states are right here. So, the Southeast states are going to be basically, if you look here, we have the Ohio River is one thing that forms a boundary line for the Southeast states. And then when it joins with the Mississippi River, it comes down here and goes through our states as well. So the Ohio River up here is going to be one of the markers for borders for the Southeast states. Then you also have, it's surrounded by water, really. You've got the Atlantic Ocean, the Gulf of Mexico, and lots of rivers throughout here. You can see lots and lots of rivers in there. The Southeast is actually split into three different parts. You have the Atlantic coast over here, you have the Gulf Coast, and then you have what they call inland states. So states that don't have access to these big waterways like the ocean and the Gulf of Mexico. So we'll talk about those in just a second. So the states that we have in this region are Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, and West Virginia. There is sometimes an argument over whether Texas and Oklahoma are part of the Southeast region. In our studies, we're studying them as part of the Southwest region. So if you do see a reference to Texas and Oklahoma in places, yes, some people do consider them the Southeast, but for our studies, we are going to put them into the Southwest. So the Alabama capital is Montgomery. Arkansas's capital is Little Rock. Florida's capital is Tallahassee. Georgia's capital is Atlanta. Kentucky's capital is Frankfort. Louisiana's capital is Baton Rouge. Mississippi's capital is Jackson. North Carolina's capital is Raleigh. South Carolina's capital is Columbia. Tennessee's capital is Nashville. Virginia's capital is Richmond. And West Virginia's capital is Charleston. Okay, so important waterways that we have. As you can see, there are tons of waterways within here. But kind of like what we talked about before, some of the major rivers are going to be your Ohio River and your Mississippi River. And then you also have the Tennessee River as well as the Arkansas River. But if you look closely, there are a lot of waterways here in this southeast area, which are going to be really important for all of the states within there. So even if they don't have an outlet to the Atlantic or the Gulf of Mexico, those rivers are really important for travel as well as for trade. And remember, I always talk about rivers as the highways of the past. So as far as trade and transportation, now and in the past, those have always been very important for that area. Large bodies of water, you have Lake Pontchartrain, which is down here in Louisiana near New Orleans. Lake Okeechobee is right down here in Florida. The Chesapeake Bay is up here, your Gulf of Mexico, and your Atlantic Ocean. So those are all very important waterways for this southeast region. All right, southeast region by population. So you have Jacksonville, Florida, this one up here, and then Charlotte, North Carolina, followed closely by Nashville, Tennessee, and then Memphis, Tennessee, and then we have Baltimore, Maryland. And then it goes all the way down. So some of these you're going to find pretty familiar areas, things like Orlando, Florida, New Orleans, Miami, Atlanta, Louisville. There are lots of very familiar cities here in the Southeast. But if you think about the highest population in the Northeast, New York City was about 8 million. So look at the difference between that. That's 10 times bigger than Jacksonville, Florida. So definitely smaller cities, but definitely still cities. You can see these skylines and metropolis areas here in the Southeast region. So our Atlantic coast region are going to be these guys over here that touch the Atlantic coast. So you've got Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. So if we look at Virginia first, here are some pictures of Virginia. So Virginia is interesting. It has a lot of mountain areas on the western side of the state. It does have some flatter plain areas. You can see the mountains in the background. But then it also butts right up to the Atlantic Ocean. So there you have beach areas as well. And then also, as same as we've talked about before, it also has some urban areas. So yeah, that's Virginia. It's got a lot of really different landscapes to it. On to North Carolina. Same kind of situation here. North Carolina has the Appalachian Mountains in it as well. So you see some really beautiful landscapes here with the mountains in the background. But then if you go to the other side, the eastern side of North Carolina, you're going to see the ocean. So you're going to see the ocean or the Outer Banks areas. So these are, it's very different landscapes as well. And also you're going to see the wonderful city areas as well. All right, South Carolina. So South Carolina has some interesting stuff as well. So you have this mountain area here. You also have this ocean area. And then you have, these are some beautiful trees that you'd see in South Carolina with some Spanish moss on them. So these are some common sites in South Carolina, but you're also going to find big cities as well. Down to Georgia. So Georgia has some hills and things like that. It also is really famous for growing peaches, so you'll see lots of farms. But then you will also have some ocean areas as well. So you've got that going and your city areas. On to the Gulf Coast states. So down here in this area, you've got Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. Alabama and Mississippi really don't have a lot of Gulf Coast areas because you get the panhandle of Florida coming all the way over here. So Alabama only has this little sliver right here, and same with Mississippi. So they don't have a ton of Gulf Coast property, but they do have some. So Florida. Florida is famous for beautiful beaches, but it also has some swampy areas in an area called the Everglades. So the Everglades is way down towards the tip of Florida, and it is famous for having so much wildlife. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. And then you do also have big booming cities like Miami. So it has a very wide variety of landscapes as well. Alabama. So Alabama has a lot of farmland in it, in the inner parts of it, but it does have Gulf areas as well. And then they also have some smaller cities in there in comparison to some of the bigger ones that we've talked about in other regions and stuff, but they do definitely have cities. Mississippi. So Mississippi is going to, again, have a lot of farming land. Yes, it has lots of rivers and lakes and stuff as well, and then it also does have some oceanfront areas, and then this is a city down there in Mississippi, so a big wide array of looks as well. Now down to Louisiana. So Louisiana, now remember in Mimal, this looks like his boot down here at the bottom. So this is Louisiana down here. So yes, you have booming city, big cities here, New Orleans, and then you also have some older homes. This is, and then you can see the trees as well, the same kind of trees we were talking about in South Carolina where they have kind of the Spanish moss hanging from them. Yes, it has a lot of swampy areas as well. So down near like the bayou area, you'll see lots of these sorts of swampy areas, but you'll also have areas where it dumps out into the Gulf as well as the Mississippi River. So now down to the inland southern states. So these are going to be your states that don't have the access to Gulf of Mexico or Atlantic Ocean waters. So you have West Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Arkansas. So West Virginia, which is way up here, right there, it is famous for lots of mountains. It's up in the Appalachian area. So you have these beautiful mountains with lots of rivers and stuff through here. It tends to be a pretty rural place, meaning it has a lot of area that's not going to be as busy as the cities and things like that in some of the other states. And then some kind of natural backgrounds and things like that. But then there are some cities in there, they're not as big as many of the ones we've talked about in other states. On to Kentucky, our neighbor to the south here. So Kentucky, again, is going to have a little bit of mountain range off to the eastern side. There are a lot of flat areas. They're famous for horses down in Kentucky. So some of these are horse farms and things like that. And yes, it does have a lot of city areas as well. Down to Tennessee. Tennessee is long and flat on the map, but this is what the landscape's going to look like. Tennessee definitely has a good deal of mountains in it, so you'll see these mountains and hills here. It does have flat areas as well with some farmland and things like that. And then here you can see some of the mountains and the flatter area. And it does have some wonderful cities in it. This is Nashville. Arkansas is right here on Mimel. It's kind of like where his genes are in my drawing of Mimel. So with Arkansas, you're going to have, it does have a lot of farmland. It has some beautiful landscapes. Here's with the Arkansas River, and you've got lots of trees and natural landscapes as well. They do also have cities just like all the other states too. So that is Arkansas. All right, some famous landmarks. Fort Sumter is a fort that is in Charleston, and it was where the first battle that started the Civil War happened. So that's Fort Sumter. Disney World is a landmark. Yeah, it's down in Orlando, Florida. So that is, it's not a natural landmark, but it is a landmark nonetheless. These are the Everglades that I was talking about. It's 1.5 million acres. So it's really, really big. It has tons of marshes and mangroves and things like that, but it also has all sorts of endangered species and stuff there too. So it's a safer place for those animals to live. But we do need to take care of the Everglades and not pollute them and not hunt the animals that are down there. You've got the leatherback turtle, Florida panther, and the manatee. So the Everglades is a place teeming with life, and we need to protect it. The Smoky Mountains, they're in Tennessee and in North Carolina. So those are some of the mountains that I showed you before. They're beautiful. The Ozark Mountains are in lots of different states, in Arkansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, and Kansas. So it's known the Ozark Mountains, or it's also known as the Ozark Plateau. And it's beautiful as well. The Outer Banks in North Carolina, I mentioned before. They're barrier islands off of the coast of North Carolina. And so there are lots of beaches and things like that, but it's a really beautiful set of barrier islands out there in North Carolina. Mammoth Cave is down in Kentucky, and it's fantastic. It is the longest cave system known in the world, which is pretty amazing that it's really basically in our backyard, right? They're in our neighboring state. It doesn't take that long to get to Mammoth Cave, but there are lots of tours and things that go through there year round. So pretty cool place to check out. The Great Dismal Swamp of Virginia and North Carolina. It sounds pretty depressing with the name, the Dismal Swamp. But it is it has some really cool wildlife and trees and things in there, but it's beautiful. The Blue Ridge Mountains are going to be in lots of different states. You've got West Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. Now, when I talk about these different mountain areas, they're all part of the Appalachian Mountains. They're just sections of the Appalachian Mountains. So yeah, this is another mountain set. We've got the Florida Keys, which are beautiful down there in Florida, the very tip of Florida. And in Key West, which is the farthest island south in the Keys, it's the southernmost point of the United States. So in the last section, we talked about Maine having the easternmost point. Florida has the southernmost point in the U.S. So that is the Florida Keys. All right, some resources down in the Southwest. There is a lot of farming, as you can see, with these light green areas. There's definitely some forests, especially over here in some of these mountain areas. They are famous for growing tobacco, and you can see these tobacco plants through here. Down in Georgia and part of Alabama, they're famous for growing peanuts, as well as peaches in this area. But yeah, there are all sorts of different things that we grow. We have different wildlife. We have beef, and we have fish and chickens. There's also cotton is a big resource that people grow down in the South as well. So there's all sorts of different things. And then down in Florida, because the weather is more tropical, you can grow things like the oranges that they're famous for down there in Florida. So those are just some of the resources that they grow. And here's some pictures of them. So some things that they're famous for, you've got soybeans, sugarcane, this is a rice plant, all sorts of different fruits. We talked about peaches and oranges and stuff like that. They're also famous for being able to raise lots of animals. Again, some things that we grow. This is a cotton plant. And then this is a tobacco plant before it's dried. Here's some hay, pine trees, and fishing. So some things that are plants that we use for all sorts of different reasons, maybe not to eat, but for different reasons. Cotton for fabric, tobacco for tobacco stuff, which is not healthy and not good for you, but people do still grow it. Hay is often, oops, I shifted one. There we go. Hay is often used to feed animals and things like that. And pine can be used for all sorts of different things. Rocks and minerals that are found in this area, you've got coal, copper, lead, and iron. So all sorts of different minerals that are helpful for all sorts of different things. Coal is pretty prevalent up in West Virginia. People use that for energy. And then some of the other metals are melted down and they make products out of them. All right, so here's your bingo for the week. The four corners are four different articles that you could read. You have a crossword puzzle, a word search, and then where in the South would you find something, and then you could also design a quarter. So you've got this article on early history of the Southeast, and there are the questions. Atlantic coast states and their questions. The Gulf Coast states and the questions about those. Inland South states, questions about that. This is the where in the South would you find. Here's your crossword puzzle, the word search. Here's to design a quarter. Please don't forget to put your name of the quarter up at the top. And then for Epic, make sure that if you do choose to read a book and count it for your bingo, to submit a screenshot of your finished book. Okay? All right, guys. I can't wait to see all of your work. And I will see you later. Thanks, guys. Bye.